It was just mesmerizing.
This was the best summer job I could have possibly imagined ever
When
happening.
I took my first steps on that stage,
beauty and power and athleticism.
I knew that I was always better than that.
that's a huge responsibility.
Those of us in the arts can do so much better.
Representation matters when you're a child.
Anyone can become the dancer.
Booking center stage was beyond my wildest dreams.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. We've got a special hour ahead for you. My name is Poppy Harlow. I'm a journalist with CNN, and I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about a movie that was very formative to my life as I was growing up, Center Stage. We're honoring the film's 20th anniversary. If you haven't seen the film, which hopefully you all have, it follows a group of aspiring professional ballet dancers as they begin training at the American Ballet Academy, of course, the feeder school for New York City's prestigious American Ballet Company, loosely based on ABT, or the American Ballet Theater. At the Academy, the characters show the rigor that it takes to become a top ballet dancer. And the film also talks about a lot of important issues: mental health, body image, social issues, cutthroat competition. The movie culminates with an end-of-the-year showcase and dancers hoping to be scouted by directors from the world's top ballet companies. It was a phenomenon, to say the least, within the dance community, and its success has only grown in the 20 years since its release. Today, it's noted as a cult classic for both dancers and non-dancers alike. Entertainment Weekly had called it a masterpiece, and I'm honored to be joined by some of the key cast members today. Sasha Radetsky, who played the role of dancer Charlie Sims, Zoe Saldana, who played the role of ballerina Eva Rodriguez, Amanda Scholl, who played the lead role of ballerina Jodie Sawyer, and Ethan Stiefel, who played American Ballet Company principal dancer and bad boy Cooper Nielsen. Bad boy. Thank you guys very much for being here. What's it like to be together? You guys haven't seen each other in ages. Zoe.
It feels real. It feels really surreal and kind of emotional because 21 years have slipped by, and so it's really good to reconnect. It was a special moment for us all, to shoot that movie, and then to shoot it in New York City in Lincoln Center. For me, it was like a dream come true, and it was home for many of you guys, and it was a wonderful experience.
Amanda, I say that you're a new mother, so congratulations on your new baby. Obviously, so you have 3, and my now 4-year-old, when she was 3, started at ABT, started these little classes at 890 Broadway. So it's kind of cool for me as a mom of an ABT dancer, if you will, to get to talk to you guys. What was it like for you, Amanda, but being an actress, but also being an amazing dancer going into this?
You're very kind, Poppy. I actually was not an actress at the time. This was my first acting role.
Yeah.
And I wasn't yet a professional dancer. I had completed my time with the San Francisco Ballet School, and I had actually just done my end of the year showcase, much like Jodie's character. So it was a little bit of art imitating my life at that time.
What's it like to be back, Amanda, to see everyone? I mean, I'm sorry we can't be in person given the times, but
no, it is disappointing. I would love to reach through the screen and hug all of their faces. I'm so happy to see all of them. I'm looking from one to the next. This is really lovely. As you said, and as Zoe mentioned, this film holds such a special place in my heart for so many reasons, and not the least of which being these people that we're chatting with today. This is a very, very special group of folks we had the opportunity to work with.
Sasha, for you and for Ethan, I mean, you guys weren't actors. You were and are dancers primarily, right? So what was it like the first day on a big movie set?
Ethan?
It was pretty overwhelming and daunting. I don't know if you remember, Amanda, but I think the first day for me on set was actually the scene in Cooper's loft.
The boudoir scene.
Yeah, so
that was the first scene.
Excuse me. That was his first scene.
Yeah. So first. I was already, as I said, pretty overwhelmed, and that then threw me in the deep end. I haven't really recovered psychologically since then, but no, I was just really fortunate to be working with Amanda, and I think by that time she was a seasoned pro, and it was obvious that she was a natural and knows what she's doing. So I was really fortunate to be working with her all throughout the film, but certainly on day one in a scene like that.
What about for you? What was it like for you to come into this? What was your first scene?
First of all, Poppy, thanks for the interest and for doing this. And yeah, it's so cool to see everybody, even though it's 2 dimensions. But Ethan and I, of course, have stayed in touch, and Amanda, we kind of sporadically stay in touch. Zoe a little less frequently, but just been so proud of what you've accomplished, and you too, Amanda. And it's like we kind of claim you guys, having known you at the beginning. You know, there's a special bond that we feel, and a special pride, you know, with all that you guys have done. My first day on set, I was late because my alarm didn't go off. I mean, the dog ate my homework, and I was late, and I was mortified. And
why am I not surprised?
You know what I mean? Yeah, it was a scene where we take the ferry around around New York, and Amanda and I had a kissing scene. So
why is this everyone's?
I don't know. There seems to be a trend. Yeah, and poor Amanda gets motion sick, so she was throwing up all that morning. Probably at the thought of having to kiss me, but I think also the roll and heave of the boat had something to do with it. So I just felt bad. We had to play this romantic scene, and she was feeling ill. But yes, that was day one.
You never stop, do you?
I still hate my body.
You're way too hard on yourself. You looked great in rehearsal.
That ballet is so not ABC.
You don't like it?
Who cares what I like? That workshop is about what Jonathan likes.
Is getting into the company really all that matters to you?
It's so different for you, Charlie. They love you. I mean, they practically printed your name in the programs already.
You need to take some time away from all this.
That is the last thing that I need.
We could go out sometime.
Like a date?
Yeah, like a date.
It's really sweet, Charlie, but I'm kind of seeing someone.
Sorry, I didn't realize.
No, it's just that it's new, and I don't want to make a big thing of it, you know?
Sure, yeah, no big thing.
I cannot believe that they made you do the bedroom scene in the Brooklyn apartment loft and the kissing on the boat first. But I suppose it's a good way to break the ice. So there you go. Zoe, you danced, but you were not a professional dancer. So there's actually also an amazing ballerina who a lot of the ballet we see in the movie is her dancing. Is that right?
Ash, yes, who I finally just rediscovered on Instagram, and everything that she's been doing, in upstate New York for her community and as a ballet dancer has been so inspiring. So she was phenomenal. She was just absolutely exceptional. And the fact that Nicholas Heitner was able to have a dancer double, Eva Rodriguez was amazing, but I saw how grueling it was for her. So every time I would attend those rehearsals, just so I can just memorize, whatever arm sequence I needed to do with the camera close up. I mean, hours would go by and I didn't even notice, just watching her and the whole company just dance and, bring all this choreography together. It was just mesmerizing.
Well, she's an amazing dancer. You can't tell it's not you, by the way. I mean, you have that. You carry yourself like a dancer. Amanda, what are you going to say? You sound
I was just going to say, Zoe's not giving herself much credit because she might not have been a professional dancer. She has beautiful port de bras. So no, it's the truth. Anything from the waist up, or that scene in Silhouette when she's in the studio by herself, that's all Zoe. And she has a beautiful port de bras. Coming from somebody who isn't too crazy about her own port de bras, I was always really taken by how you carried yourself in your épaulement and everything. It was really gorgeous.
There you go.
Validated by legit ballet dancers is like everything that I can possibly dream of. And I have to say that just having just basic training as a child for ballet is the only reason why I was able to become like a stunt actress, to be able to do the films that I was able to do. And it was because of one, Center Stage. For some reason, people thought, well, you're a real dancer. And I remember always going, no, that's not. I wish I was a good liar. I wish I was like, yes, well, thank you so much. But I never could take the credit for anything. But I owe a lot to just being, you know, having some kind of dance training. I owe a lot of my career to that, for sure.
Why do you think, Ethan, this is your life for so many years was dance, and I would assume given the work it takes, such a key focus on dance. Why do you think that Center Stage resonated so much with people who aren't dancers and who know nothing about the professional ballet world? Why did it work as a movie?
Well, I think that dance films certainly 20 years ago were few and far between. Having been active and interested in dance for as long as you were mentioning, I could have counted maybe on one hand the number of dance films, and then on another level, the number of dance films that really has a focus on the dance and trying to present that with people who have had dance training or were professional artists or serious ballet students. So I think that because those films were few and far between, it really captured people's interest and imagination. And then speaking again, I guess from just a dancer's perspective, that the fact that I think the repertoire or the different dances that were involved in the movie, there was such a variety from the classics to jazz to a motorcycle being driven on stage, as well as the music that was being used, and the aesthetic, as well as the personalities. I think that that really also just got people engaged and intrigued, and potentially had something for everyone, so to speak.
I heard, is it true that the motorcycle only happened once you got cast?
I think so. Yeah, I think that that wasn't originally in the script, at least the one that I was reading, and I had been riding bikes for a number of years before that, and I think Susan Stroman had the idea, but maybe someone else did, and it just seemed to fit, I guess, Cooper's approach and point of view. And I know I had a blast and never thought that that was filmed in what was then the New York State Theater. It's been renamed at Lincoln Center, and that's where I started my professional career with the New York City Ballet. So when I took my first steps on that stage, I never thought that a few years later I'd be riding a Harley Davidson on the stage and doing a little pas de deux with it.
Oh, exactly. Well, what about you, Sasha, in terms of, so I have heard that both of your wives, Ethan and Sasha, both ABT icons in their own right, Cillian Murphy and Stella Abrera, lovingly survey your followers still on Instagram and see if they are Team Charlie or Team Cooper. Is this correct?
Do they? I don't know.
That's what I heard.
I haven't really been paying attention to that, but
I think from what I heard, Team Charlie is winning, hands down. So.
No, Eric. This is about sex. I want you to feel it. Let me show you. Now you see where I am? I'm right up against her. My hips are right up against her. You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Charlie, what do you think about this for the end of the pas de trois? Can I see that? Sure.
I changed it a little. Could work. That could work too. How about like that? Why don't you just try this?
I could work on it. You do that. Moving on.
On a more serious note, Amanda, I was reading this and it really struck me in this interview I read this week that you know, there's something that genuinely has brought you to tears over the years since the film came out, Amanda, in terms of the number of male dancers that have approached you about the film and said, I showed this movie to my parents, and that's when they understood why I wanted to dance. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit and the real importance of breaking stereotypes about male dancers?
Yeah, I mean, you're making me teary because I can think of a handful of times when I've had that exact experience with male dancers who, and usually they're younger, late teens, early 20s, who have approached me and they've said, you know, thank you. And this never really occurred to me while we were filming. I mean, I have to go into this saying, this was the best summer job I could have possibly imagined ever having in my entire life. We spent a summer working together with people who I ended up loving, and friendships that, you know, have carried on for decades. And so it never occurred to me that people were going to watch this, or that it was going to be as impactful or carry a message or an importance in people's hearts like it did mine. And so, to your point, having men approach me and say, I was able to explain to my parents why dance is so important, and I did it through this movie, or sitting down watching it with them made them realize why this has become such a passion for me, why this ballet is important to me. It has resonated so deeply within me because there is a stereotype, as you said, and these two gentlemen who we're talking with today have reached the peaks of their careers, and they understand what it is to dance and to carry a ballet in from a male perspective. And not everyone understands how powerful male dancing can be. And I think that's something to see these two beautiful male dancers on film really had a very strong importance for a lot of aspiring young guys watching it.
Sasha, what was it like for you in terms of breaking stereotypes, and have you had the same experience with male dancers?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda, for the kind words. All of us who are men in the dance world have stories of harassment or just stupid stuff growing up because there's some stereotypes associated with male dancers. And unfortunately, you know, they seem to endure. But yes, Center Stage, I think, has been really effective at dispelling some of the stereotypes and opening people's eyes up to the beauty and power and athleticism and other sort of ineffable virtues of dance, and male dance in particular. So yeah, I remember a lot of people too, the more unlikely people, the sanitation workers or the guys at biker rallies, or, you know, they'll come up and be like, oh, that Center Stage movie, I really like that. Or sometimes they'll say, oh, my wife loves that movie, but then they'll go on to talk in detail about all the great things about it. I'm like, your wife likes it. Okay. So yeah, and it was such a great opportunity to present to a wider audience male dancing and ballet and sort of capture indelibly what we do. Yeah,
for sure. Ethan, what about for you?
Well, dovetailing, I guess, a little bit on what Sasha was saying. Yeah, I guess one of the more popular or common compliments, I guess, of the highest regard would be that someone would say, yeah, my girlfriend or my wife or my partner was watching this the other day, and it wasn't half bad. So yeah, I really just echo what Sasha said, and I think that you know, as we've all discussed, because of the people that we were working with on the film on every level, but just again, as someone since the age of 8 or 9 was pursuing a ballet career, just took a great sense of pride in the fact that I was given the chance or the opportunity to present dance on the highest level, and that's all you can do, is present your art form in the best light possible. That's a huge responsibility, and one that I didn't take lightly. But at the same time, if we're still talking about this film right now, as we are 20 years later, and some of the topics that we are discussing, it seems it did resonate.
And it's on Netflix now, and there's a TV series coming. I mean, for sure it resonated. Zoe, with your beautiful port-de-bras, still, I wonder what it was like to have fellow actors who were also the best of the best at the subject. And that means, did you look to them for tips? Did they help you in those moments? I know obviously you had someone dancing for you in some scenes, but I'm just interested in what that was like, because that's got to be different than a lot of other films, right?
It was my very first project. Before Center Stage, I had only done a couple, maybe like one episodic of Law and Order. And for all of us New Yorkers, like if you're starting out in acting and you do one episode of Law and Order, you're off to a good start,
Totally.
But booking Center Stage was beyond my wildest dreams, because I think 2 or 3 years before that, when I was 17 or 18, I moved back from the Caribbean to New York, and I wanted to continue and try to maybe pursue a professional career in ballet. I was incredibly discouraged with the lack of, just diversity in the classical form of dance. And so my heart was broken. I feel like that was my first heartbreak.
Wow.
And so booking Center Stage, I felt was like a sign from the universe, where you get to bid off and say, bid goodbye, a part of my life that had been so fundamental up until that point, and say hello to another form of art that I was inquisitive about, but being really insecure. So, it kind of like Center Stage sealed that deal, and that part was really important in my life. Getting to sit through those rehearsals and be around, all of you guys. I was always having like out of body experiences where I just felt like this big geek, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I would find myself time would go by and I had no idea that I was frozen. Just watching them. To me, ballet is one of the most just exquisite forms of just visual art that I've ever witnessed. And in the last 21 years of my life, everywhere I go, every city that I've been to, whether I'm touring just for 24 hours promoting a movie or on vacation, I've always made it my passion to visit whatever, art company is there, whatever art performance is being is in season, because it's something that still lives within me. So to me, people like Amanda, Sasha, and Ethan are giants, because this was my introduction to art when I was very, very young. And it's not, you have to be born with it. I honestly believe that it's obviously having a passion, like an outlier, but it's having the physical gift of movement, and not everybody possesses that. It's like a drummer. Not everybody's born a drummer, and I believe that. When you meet them, you're like, oh, very kooky people. He's a drummer for sure. And I feel like ballet dancers are born with that kind of specialty, but it's just my opinion.
To that point, one thing I loved so much again, and was reminded of watching the film, there's so much talk about, but you don't have the perfect feet, or this or that, or your body's not exactly the right, whatever, body type, which is ridiculous. But it shows that passion and work can trump all of that, which I loved and was struck by, and hope is, if my daughter continues at ABT, and like something I can remind her of. And I hope this is a better world we're in now, just in terms of more self-acceptance, I hope, for people. You bring up the issue of lack of diversity, and Amanda, I want to ask you about this, because as a dancer, I remember so well the hour I spent about a year and a half ago interviewing Misty Copeland, who is just obviously a remarkable dancer and the first African-American female principal dancer at ABT. And she said to me, Poppy, the ballet world does not really celebrate women of color. And that was like just over a year ago. Amanda, there's just such a dearth of diversity in the professional ballet world still. And given this moment we're in this country, a moment of reckoning, how do you think about that?
Misty's right. There isn't a lot of diversity in ballet. And I don't think I'm the right person to necessarily speak to that point, because I myself am not I sort of fit into the cookie cutter mold of what a lot of people think of when they think of a ballet dancer, body type accepted. But Misty's absolutely correct. It's something that I think ought to be changed. And, you know, with Zoe speaking to her moment of disheartenment, realizing that she maybe doesn't look like everyone else in her ballet class, or maybe in a company, that's really disappointing for young girls. And I think it's probably time that we start changing that mold and that perception, because anyone can become a dancer, you know, any form of dance either. And I think that's, the guys spoke to stereotypes with men and how they've been slowly breaking down those barriers. And I think it's probably time for us to start breaking down the barriers as far as color is concerned and diversity in the dance world.
I mean, for sure, you know, I mean, and Zoe, I'd love for you to weigh in on this. I you know, Misty brought up so beautifully in our interview, Raven Wilkinson, you know, who was at the time back in the 1950s, the only Black dancer in her company. And that seeing her is what in many ways opened the door for Misty. And Misty said, a hard thing for us as Black and brown dancers is we don't see or know our history within the classical ballet world. And there is a history. You know, I mean, if there were ever a time, I think the time was a long time ago to have changed this, but you went through it because that was your dream or a dream, and you didn't see a lot of people that looked like you doing it.
Representation matters when you're a child. It's how are you going to believe that you can be a president, you can save the world, you can find a cure for cancer, if you don't see in your environment depictions, accurate depictions of yourself in these roles that are necessary, that are important, that are, you know, giant-like forms, you know. And the broken heart is something that is very traumatic, and it carries, you know, your whole life. You carry that your whole life. But I do believe that it is a conversation that is starting to be had in circles that are more inclusive. I think that for so long, the matters of inclusivity and racial disparity were topics that only people of color or minority communities were having. And I think that the more Anglo-Americans invite themselves and take, you know, partnership in the conversation, that's what's going to bring change. Because Jodie Sawyer's monologue in the end, when Jonathan invites her to join the company, and she basically says, in other words, like, she could join the company and just be a part of the corps and just wave a little rose back and forth, but she's better than that. That is a universal, you know, theme that every parent tells every child, regardless of their gender or their color or their race or their, you know, creed. And that was what I always held on to, you know. And even though I walked away with a broken heart from an environment that wasn't representative of who I was, I knew that I was always better than that, you know. And but I do believe that it takes leaders that start their companies, whether they're big or small, and take on that mission to be inclusive of all, to bring change, you know. I want this conversation, I want to hear what Ethan, Sasha, and Amanda have to say, because they are a part of the ballet world, and they see this imbalance, and I know that they've actively practiced, you know, against it to bring forward change. So I want them to sort of carry that message more, because I'm doing what I can in Hollywood, but I know that the ballet world needs so much support, and they've been active representatives of that message.
So much so, and I think your point about inclusivity is everything. You know, we live in Brooklyn and take our kids to see the, you know, protests, and it's right, you know, we live right there, Grand Army Plaza. And what is encouraging to me is that so many of the protesters are white. Finally. And it's just not how it's been. You know, I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, so all of the last month, it's very closely, and have seen the inequality there for years, for decades. You know, there's just so many levels of this, and I think the dance world is representative of just another place where there is that disparity. So Ethan and Sasha, I want you to both talk about this from your life living in that world. Sasha, to you first. Why hasn't it gotten better? Why hasn't the ballet world gotten much more diverse?
It's a very important question. I think there are some bigger global issues that need to be addressed, like systemic racism in society. And we need policies from the government and in Washington, more local governments to address those issues before we see true change. But those of us in the arts can do so much better, and we have to do so much better. And we're in the middle of a really urgent and important moment of reflection and conversation about where we failed in the past and where we're failing now and how we can improve things going forward. I think dancers like Misty, who's probably the biggest mainstream dance celebrity since Baryshnikov, and other artists of color like Stella, my wife, have had a big influence, and their activism and their grace and beautiful dancing have inspired new generations. But we need to make artists of color and audiences of color feel more welcome and more supported on a number of levels. And I feel really fortunate to be in a position to potentially have a positive influence going forward. And I feel committed and I feel galvanized to do so. So I want to feel like I'm optimistic, but we'll see. But I think change is necessary, and in order for the art form to endure, we have to change, and we have to reflect, where we live and American values and 21st century values.
For sure. Ethan, what about you? When you were filming Center Stage and when you were coming up in your dance career, I wonder how you thought about race and the lack of diversity in the top tiers of the ballet world, and how you think about it now.
Well, I've been fortunate to have been a performer, have been involved in dance education, whether in a leadership role or directing to a certain extent. And if we're talking about Center Stage, it's been 20 years now, and I can just say this, that if we look at the situation and the climate and the sensibilities in terms of when Center Stage was filmed and looking at it now, particularly in the ballet world, it's sad, it's upsetting, it's frustrating that actually not that much progress has been made. Yeah. And that's unacceptable. And so what I can add to this conversation after everybody has spoken so meaningfully about the topic is just to really make a statement as a person that potentially, whether as a performer or is in the position that I am in as a mentor or a leader to a certain extent, is that I make a commitment, and that I'm an ally, and that I'm going to do everything that I can and be active, proactive, and be anti and outspokenly anti-racist in whatever I do. And so hopefully whatever platform I do have, and I'm not saying that I have a huge one, but just as a person, as a human being, that, I stand here today and make that commitment, knowing that I should and can do better and will.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys all for weighing in on that. I think it's so important in this moment and going forward. I think the issue is just how do we sustain it and make sure that this energy actually turns into real change at the top. I mean, I think a lot about the tops of companies, corporations, boards, that can make changes and have real diversity. So thank you guys on that. A little bit more back to the film and the scenes that we saw and we didn't see. So from my research, I understand, Zoe, that there was a scene maybe about your brother that was cut out. I mean, what do fans that are watching want to know about what was left on the edit room floor?
That Eva owed a lot of, of what she was doing in her career and the tryouts at ABC to her brother. She had an older brother, and they both came from like Boston, and he had been kind of like her caretaker and her number one fan, and kind of like her, her manager in a way, always pushing her to stop being so stubborn and to really give in to this uncanny talent that she had and love that she had for ballet. And so they moved together to New York, and he starts to, he becomes like a taxi driver, and unfortunately, he dies suddenly, and the whole company, attends the funeral service with Eva, and that kind of like is her turning point. That's when she really decides to be honest about how she truly feels about dance, and then she just begins to dance for herself, and she also begins to dance for her brother, and. Yeah. So that was a beautiful sort of like story for Eva Rodriguez. But I remember when Nicholas Heitner, came back to New York, and he was like, well, the film is finished and we have to do some ADR work. And I want to sit down with you, but I want to tell you in person. And he tells me that he had to sort of, edit that part of Eva Rodriguez's character out and her storyline. I was, of course, you're kind of like a little devastated, but I don't know. Like I understood.
Why was it? Was it time? I mean, I know I lose stuff all the time because of timing.
It became too long of a movie. And once I was able to see the movie, I didn't feel that it took away from Eva's character. I mean, at least at that time. And when I saw just all the themes that he wanted to kind of truncate into one film, there was only so much that he could do. I mean, he was talking about, self-acceptance. He was talking about following your dreams and not the dreams that your mom may have, because, there were all these topics that he wanted to deal and had to do. And also with the topic of representation that only, one movie, an hour and a half can only deal with so much. So I was able to understand. And what I appreciate about Nicholas is that he took the actor out, Victor, and he had dinner with him, and he walked him through, the reasons why. And that was very classy. That was very beautiful for him to have done that, because many directors would have never taken the time with an actor, especially if it's a supporting actor. So that always stayed with me. And that was like he became a role model to me at that time.
You've kept in touch, Sasha, with Nick, right?
A little bit. I got to see him a year ago in London, but it had been a few years since we connected. Yeah.
What was that like?
As Zoe alluded, I mean, he's just the classiest and kindest man. He was then, he is now. He's done great things with the National Theater and hasn't been doing a lot of films, but he's been making a really big impact on stage. Yeah, Nick, I mean, you can tell that he respected and loved ballet because he made ballet kind of the central star. Also dealing with first-time actors. I mean, we've all talked about this, just what a nurturing hand he had with all of us and kind of shepherded us very gently in the right direction and had a lot of patience and also solicited our opinions to strike the right notes of authenticity. So yeah, it was great to connect with him again. I love the guy and really respect him, and he sends his love to all of you guys too. Like us, he's been following everyone's careers and so proud.
I have many favorite scenes. I love the final workshop scene, Amanda, where, it goes from like the classical ballet to all of a sudden is tutu the right word? I don't know. Gets like ripped off and you're twirling. But what I want you to share with people is how hard it was actually physically, like from a ballet standpoint, to pull that off and get it and do the move. I mean, literally pull it off and figuratively pull it off. What did you have to do?
To get the tutu off?
Yes, because you had to have a lot of strength and go like a reverse way to get it off or something, right?
Right. Well, that tutu, that tutu was held together by 1,000,001 teeny tiny little snaps going around my trunk. So to get that tutu on required the nimble fingers of maybe 5 costume workers and a solid 15 plus minutes snapping me together. So in the interest of time, we needed to get it done as well and as quickly as possible. So the step you're speaking of, Ethan takes a corner of the tutu and I do chaîné turns away from him. But the force you need to do chaîné turns, you're supposed to travel forward. Ethan needed to pull me backwards because the tutu needed to unsnap while the snaps need to go forward. And in all of his brute strength, Ethan pulling me backwards, me going forwards. If you watch it, I'm kind of going in place because I don't really have enough strength to go forward and try to get this sucker off of my body. So it's maybe not the best example of chaîné turns ever depicted on film, but it's what I had to present.
It's just such a great scene. I'm also like, definitely want to someday do my hair, however, your amazing hair in that scene with like all the twists and turns and braids. And I was like, how did they do that so quickly?
And you know what? Lynn, who was, her last name is escaping me right now, the hairstylist, did all of that without any hairspray. She really set me up for a lifetime of disappointment as far as hairstylists go going forward, because she never once used spray or gel. She made a little bit of wax. Yeah. So after that moment going forward, every set I'd go on, even if it was just a simple, just down, I'd say, well, I don't use hairspray. And they'd be like, girl, you need some hairspray. And I was like, no. Lynn,
like,
hair.
It's like commercial breaks. I'm like,
Lynn is a little magician and she could do anything with my hair. Yeah, anything at all. And so from that point forward, I was forever disappointed because of that woman's amazing artistry.
Ethan, did you actually help choreograph any of, it's such a unique, just watching the final scene and the different scenes of the workshop. Did you guys weigh in and say like, actually this doesn't work or this would be better? Or
I think that Susan Stroman had a very clear idea and vision about what she wanted to achieve from the dance, and actually came in really well prepared in terms of having things blocked out. Now, with that being said, though, I know there were definitely certain passages where she would ask me, well, I want to capture this kind of energy, or this is what kind of impact we want to have, and I want you to do something, let's say traveling straight downstage, from upstage to downstage or on diagonal, and that I could weigh in or choose, something that I felt comfortable with and would achieve what it is that she was going for. To take that to another place, though, then I think just within it, and this would also speak to my experience in the film in general, even with some of the acting or dialogue scenes, was everybody was very open, from Sir Nicholas Heitner to Stroman, to all of my colleagues, in essence leaving things open to interpretation and leaving things open to the moment. Even though you're capturing it on film, that one specific moment, a lot of us lived in the live performance or live in the live performance arena. And so again, to give it some real authenticity, the essence of that was also then, I think, coming through on set with the film. And then again, just makes it special effect.
We have like 1 or 2 minutes left, but I would love for people to know what you're all doing now. So Ethan, let me just start with you, and I'll go around. What is your world like now?
Obviously very different than it would have been 3 or 4 months ago, for any number of reasons. But at the moment, I've got my hands full with my wonderful and spirited wife, Jillian, taking care of our 1-year-old son Axe, teaching some virtual classes. That's what I do now. My bread and butter is an instructor and sometimes choreographer in the ballet world. And otherwise, with the free time, I'm trying to do motorcycle maintenance on my bike.
There you go. There you go. I love that. What about you, Sasha?
I'm artistic director of American Ballet Theater's second company. It's called ABT Studio Company, and it's the feeder into the main company from which most of the dancers hail. So I think 80% of ABT dancers are studio company alumni, including myself, including Misty and David Hallberg, Isabella, a bunch of great dancers. So I teach and direct and commission choreography for 12 handpicked dancers from around the world and from ABT school. And I'm married to.
Sorry.
What did you say?
I was just saying, Sasha's my boss, so actually Charlie is Cooper's boss.
That's true.
In this,
Love that.
in this situation.
You get the girl, you get the job, you get it all. I love that. So I often go to the ballet alone, and I cannot wait until another moment when I can, like, kids to husbands, get on the subway, go up to Lincoln Center and just sit and watch and take it in. Again, it was like one of the first things I remember doing by myself after having kids. So thank you guys for what you do. Quickly before we go, Amanda, both you and Zoe have had this remarkable career in acting after this. So, and you're a new mom, so you've got your hands full on all levels.
I'm a new mom, and I've been the silver lining of the last 3 months is I was given a maternity leave I didn't know I was going to get.
Great.
So that's what I'm doing right now, is just spending time, whether he likes it or not, 24 hours a day with my little infant. I'm just taking that all in. No, I'm very lucky to have this time, because the last 6 years I was lucky as well to have employment on a couple of different television shows, filming primarily in Toronto. So now we're back in Los Angeles, just being a family right now.
That's great. Zoe, I don't know if you felt like this with your 3 boys, but I remember, like, before I had kids, and I was like, I don't know, what am I going to do with my maternity leave? I mean, I'm not going to be working. What am I going to be doing? And now when I look back on it, I took 3 months for both. I wish I'd taken longer, because work waits, and that time never comes back. So Amanda, it's a blessing.
Thank you.
Yeah. What about you, Zoe?
Well, I wanted Sasha to finish saying, because he was talking about his wife.
Thanks, Zoe. Just I'm married to Stella Brera, who was a principal dancer with ABT up until a week ago. She was slated to retire at the Met on June 13th, but of course that couldn't happen. But she's taking over a cultural park called Kotzebue Cultural Park, and it's upstate. And that's all. I just wanted to give a shout out to Stella. Thanks, Zoe. She says hi, by the way.
Oh my God, they were there that summer in the movie. They were so spectacular.
I'm sorry if I stepped on that. I'm so sorry. I didn't for you. I didn't hear that, but yay, Stella, and congrats to her on an amazing career. And Zoe, if you could talk about what you're doing, but also, I didn't know all the work you've done on Bise. Am I saying it right? Like, that's really amazing. Like, off screen, shining a light on diversity and America today, and good for you.
Thank you so much. I think it was the least that I could do, is just share with my country my American experience as a first generation New Yorker, woman of color, dreamer, like all of these things, and in hopes that by relating to others that have similar experiences, they feel that representation of themselves and feel encouraged to cultivate aspirations, no matter what their environment may be, because being someone that on the books, by all means, the way that I was raised and how I was born, for me to end up here is sort of like a rarity. I don't want that to be the case for so many other Americans, So after I had my boys, it all came into, it was all very clear once I saw these beautiful little boys that are mixed just like I am, and my husband is an immigrant from Italy, but they don't look like him. They look like me, and that was a wonderful thing. But what overcame me was this fear that by being these American Black males, that they were going to sort of, be struck with so much adversities that they were going to feel exhausted by the time they were in their early 20s. And I want them to explore being classical ballet dancers, which I've tried. They're only 5. The twins are 5. Like twice to put them in ballet, and they're like, I want parkour. You're like, oh, you know, but I'm never going to give up. And I just wanted that by the time they're 14 and they're asking us for cell phones, I want there to be stories, whether they live in 3-minute short forms of themselves and depicted in forms of giants and not just of victims or civil rights sort of leaders, because those are great, but we need more of the layers of what compose one single human in America. And so that's what I've been doing, besides, you know, being in space and playing green and blue women, because that's been also very fantastic. And my sisters and I have a production company, because we've, as New Yorkers, we grew up in a little apartment loving storytelling. So now we get to tell our own stories, and our mission is to just be unapologetically female and tell great stories just with women at the helm, you know, and regardless of their cultural background or their sexual preference. So we've been having a blast with that, and we've been selling, you know, IP left and right. So that keeps me, I'm busy on all fronts, but my biggest role up until now, besides Eva Rodriguez and Center Stage, is the role to be a mother and a wife. And I've really been devoting my life for the past 7 years to that. And I'm inebriated with just the ups and downs, the peaks and valleys of those roles, and sharing that in hopes that I provide, you know, some solace to women that are trying to juggle all of these things in addition to being mothers and wives, and to not feel they have to give up one role over another, but they can actually have it all.
Yeah, it's hard, but you can, and it takes a village and good men standing by our side, or partners standing by our side to make it happen, for sure. Thank you all very, very much. I wish I could go on even longer. I loved this. It was a really cool experience for me. So thanks for letting me help do this with you guys. And obviously just a message to everyone watching, in times like this, the arts have been impacted particularly hard, of course. With movies like Center Stage, we're reminded about the power of art and the power of dance for society. So Sasha, if you could just say a few words about the impact of COVID-19 on the dance world and support that people can give.
Well, thank you, Poppy, and thank you, audience, for joining us. And all you guys on the screen, you're all such inspiring people, and I hope we can do this live someday, like over dinner and drinks. The impact of COVID-19 on the dance world and on all live performances has been devastating. It's crucial now more than ever for cultural organizations to raise much needed funds. The arts rely on charitable contributions in order to create and present exciting performances of the highest quality to the widest possible audience. We hope that our viewers and fans are inspired to see these companies, including American Ballet Theatre, for years to come.
Thank you for that. Everyone watching, please do what you can to help. And thanks to all of you guys. Good luck. Please let me come for a drink when you do this together in person. That would like make my world. Thanks for your time today, and good luck to you guys. Hey, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.